His towering image may have been recognized the world over, but here in Africa, Fidel Castro's influence was magnified, from supporting freedom fighters to offering medical and military support to several African countries. The Cuban leader has left an indelible mark on the continent. In the early 60s, Castro threw his support behind the Algerian liberation struggle against France. Cuban doctors and soldiers were among the first to arrive in Algeria to offer a hand to independence forces fighting to push French colonialism out of their country. In the following years, Cuba's support in Africa increased in size and scope. By the late 1990s, Fidel Castro had ties with 17 African countries and supported 3 insurgencies. And in 2011, Castro was among the leaders who stood up against NATO's intervention in Libya and the ousting of Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi. Castro helped to rewrite the history books of Southern Africa. He sent more than 36,000 troops into Angola to fight South Africa's apartheid government, thus preventing that country being colonized. Castro played an instrumental role in ending apartheid in South Africa. And on a visit to Cuba a few years ago, the late Nelson Mandela praised the island nation for its selflessness. Jean Keo, CCTV.
Welcome.
Hi, everybody.
We got such an interesting show today.
Oh, we've already gotten comments. The comments have started on the show today. Welcome, welcome, everyone, to Here to Help You, featured on my TCN TV network. And as usually, as you guys know, our show starts Tuesdays from 5 o'clock until 6 o'clock. And on our show, we are all about education, empowerment, innovation, and perspective. And today,
definitely a lot of perspective.
So I wanted to start with that clip just because actually a guest that we have today, we're not going to talk about her yet because we have a video that will kind of introduce her better than we can at the end of this. But we're actually speaking about people outside the African culture who are actually standing up.
Yes.
And pushing towards the liberation of us as African people. And Castro was huge for that. People usually, you know what, they demonize this man for being so horrible, when he actually did a lot for us as African people in Africa and obviously for us living in the diaspora.
Yeah, him, Che Guevara, you know, in fact.
Oh, Che, of course.
Right, he wrote a book called The African Dream, which should be a reading, you know, for a lot of us who are looking to go and add to our library at some point.
Yes.
Right, but we can't downplay in regards to what Castro has done.
No.
Right, when you look at the African genocide, you know, and how we were taken from the West Coast, and especially a lot of the Angolans, they have their roots, you know, within Cuba, and vice versa in this case, right? Because of course, when the transport came over, right, into, of course, the Americans, the Americas, I should say, right, a lot of Angolans were displaced in Cuba. Okay. So Castro recognizing that, right, and of course, you know, definitely recognizing, you know, that whole continental tie. Right, because as the video states, he went into South Africa, right? Not only just South Africa, but he assisted, right, in 17 countries, right? So
did a lot of work.
Yeah, you know,
did a lot of work. And before we go any further, we have to, of course, remember to big up everyone who makes this possible.
Big up.
We can't forget Miss Anisha, our production manager, who does everything she can to make sure that I get angles and that may look good, and that our guests look good. So thank you, Anisha, for all your hard work. We appreciate you. Let's jump right into this. Now, as I was saying, Dave was a little salty earlier
She wasn't
Because
saying that. She just,
no,
that's what Ruby's
actually,
right now.
Anisha said that Salty Dave is her favorite Dave
Man can't solve.
because he
Man can
was
only
so
screw.
vexed. And the reason it is because we have
There is
these
no
new.
reason.
No, there is,
No,
and we're gonna
there's
explain.
no- come on, get out of here with all of that. Listen, man. You want to turn this into a tit for tat? You know, allow that. we have things for do.
All
Bigger
right.
things for do.
All right, I'm gonna let. So Dave will be handling a lot of this interview today. I'm just here to, throw in my words of wisdom from time to time.
Oh, nice.
You
Go on
know,
with
whatever
it.
words I got. Let's head right into it, sir. Talk to us. And how did you find this? How did you find Penny? Because she's I've heard some of her speeches, and this woman is fire.
Yeah. So today on the show we have Miss Penny Hess. She is the chairwoman of the African People's Solidarity Committee. And what really drew me to this is that the solidarity movement I've only heard in theory. Chancellor Williams, in fact, he was one of the first authors that I heard speak of this in theory.
Okay.
Right? Where simply you're looking at people from all cultures looking to go ahead and uplift the human race.
Didn't the Black Panthers kind of do this though?
Well, they organized, of course, other meetings, but they didn't
Other-
necessarily have an actual solidarity
Okay.
committee.
Okay. They just had different movements throughout the country.
They inspired other movements.
Okay.
So like the AIM or the American Indian movement.
Yes.
Right.
I know there's a Latin American
the
one as
Latin
well,
American
right?
movement as well,
Okay.
right? I mean, by means, I'm sure somebody can go in and correct me. However, though, their inspiration was over just our own culture.
Okay.
Right, it's spread amongst, of course, different cultures, right? And now to see such an organization right now, right, which is no longer an actual theory, but is actually something in practice.
Which I never knew.
No, definitely, and it isn't widespread. I mean, by means, look, we're across the border here, north,
Yeah.
right? And so we hear in passing, right, only what happens in the Americas. Right, so I mean, we don't get a chance to hear in regards to none of us knows that the African People's, Socialist Party has been established since the early '70s.
Right.
Right, and then if we do know that, of course, we turn a blind eye to it, but for the simple fact that we're still dealing with winter. Right?
We hate winter in the north.
Yeah, we do. We do.
We truly do. So what do we have to look forward to today, Dave?
I'm interested in hearing, her story, what inspired her to get involved with the movement.
I have so many questions.
And
for
by
Penny.
means, we can go ahead and throw them out too, and we'd love to go ahead and hear from, all our viewers, any questions that you do have.
For everyone who had comments earlier, here's the
throw 'em
time
out.
to call in, put up your comments. If we don't get to them now, and if Penny doesn't get to them, they're gonna be definitely, I would say, comment on YouTube. That'd be the most diverse page to comment on, because at least Penny can get to that
Right
and
away,
answer
yeah.
you directly. So please feel free, once we start putting some questions out to her, for you to comment, like, of course, if this interests you, and share this, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, because, at the end of the day, I mean, we have a natural resistance,
Naturally.
right?
Yep.
But I'd love to hear from Penny in regards to how she has
deals
been
with
able
that
to
resistance.
not even just from us, but from her own as
From
well,
white people,
right?
they're probably that's what I'm saying. I have so many questions. 'Cause I'm sure white people are just like, what are you doing?
right.
Right? They're probably so confused as to why she's putting this much
Her
effort.
life on the line.
Yeah, and for as long as she's been doing it.
Yeah, I can't even fathom how much she's been a target,
Yeah.
right?
And we'll ask her all these
By means, y'all got to stick around. This is gonna be a wonderful conversation.
So what other details can you give us on the organization, if you have any, before we kind of do want to jump right into this conversation?
So, if anybody has heard of or hasn't heard of Chairman O'Malley, right? The African People's Socialist Party, right? Chairman O'Malley, he heads the organization. And in fact, for all us hip hop heads, if we know Dead Prez,
Dead Prez spoke on them, actually. Yeah, I saw a video on
they're
that.
part of the movement.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
right. So I mean, they went ahead and actually, in fact, their first LP, right? Let's Get Free. The opening intro, that's Chairman O'Malley, when he's talking about the wolf and the double-edged sword.
Interesting. Dead Prez would be seen as a very political group who they stand for Black liberation,
Yes.
and solidarity, and
Right.
the rise and empowerment of us. So there's some strong people behind this Socialist Party.
They've been around for a minute, 1972, I believe, is when the actual Socialist Party was formed. Penny will get into regards to when the Solidarity Committee was formed as well. which I don't believe it wasn't too long after the actual Socialist Party was formed, right? But of course, Penny will go into the history.
And she's been part of it from the beginning, yes?
From pretty much from the jump.
From the genesis?
Yeah. You know, so I mean, I'm interesting. You know, like
I have so many questions.
What I'm really looking forward to is seeing in regards to like what organization does, right, and how organization can go ahead and actually inspire people. You know, regardless of that, you know, in regards to our reservations, right, they're organized, and we here in the North are not, right? So I mean, hopefully it lights a fire, right, for us to get organized.
Well, my whole thing too is why is it again that there's someone else outside of us fighting for reparations?
Well, I'm sure we are as well, but I mean,
how much and how organized is it?
There's a thing, right? But
That's
I'm sure
my
Penny
thing.
will definitely go ahead and elaborate in some of those things
I'm
as well.
so
right?
excited. So let's head out. We won't stick too long in the first segment, but we're going to end with a video that can introduce Penny better than we can introduce her ourselves. We'll see you soon on Here to Help You.
White people, we have to be part of changing this world, not just reforming it. We look around and see what the U.S. is doing in our name to African people inside this country and to oppressed people all around the world. We can't leave this for another generation. We have to take our responsibility. But we have to see the world as it really is, not as we imagine it. We have to see it through the eyes of the African working class and oppressed peoples around the world. We have to talk about reparations. We must take responsibility for the fact that we have carried out colonial violence against African people. We have lynched, we have raped, we have burned. We have participated in the genocide against the indigenous people. We have endorsed and supported U.S. wars of terror and occupation around the world. Every dream, every aspiration, every opportunity that we have comes at the expense of someone else. We owe reparations to African people. We can end our self-imposed isolation from African people and the majority of humanity under the leadership of the organized African working class struggling for the freedom and liberation of Africa and African people everywhere. Join us at the Unity Through Reparations Conference, sponsored by the African People's Solidarity Committee under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party, January 7th and 8th, St. Petersburg, Florida. Unity Through Reparations.
Hello, my name is Anisha, and I'm the production manager of TCN Network. Have you ever wanted to host your own show? Do you have a message to share? Well, you're in luck. We are looking for dynamic and unique individuals to host their own shows. We are seeking people who are committed, motivated, and energetic. Do you want to be the next Jimmy Fallon, Ellen DeGeneres, or Shane and Ryan from BuzzFeed Unsolved? Start here. Fill out the Propose a Show form on mytcntv.com. We're here to educate, support, and build the community. Can you lead by example? Go the extra mile and seek knowledge? Are you humble, disciplined, responsible, selfless, and enthusiastic? Those are our core values. And if you identify with them, you could be part of a growing network that focuses on positivity and uplifting our community. We can't wait for you to join us on TCN Network and hope to hear from you soon.
Are you retiring smart? Make your home's equity work for you. With your home's equity and our 30 years of experience, the Retire Smart Properties team can help you achieve the quality of life you've always wanted. Our services are 360 degrees. We'll give you advice, take care of staging and selling, and help you find the perfect home and community to transition to. It's time to enjoy the retirement lifestyle you deserve. Visit our website today to learn how you can use your home to retire comfortably. The Retire Smart Properties team, powered by RE/MAX West.
Oppressed peoples have a right to resist and protest their oppression at all times and in any situation. And this is not a situation where the system is broken. This is how America was formed. It was built on violence. It was built on slavery. It was built on kidnapping an entire continent of human beings from their land and turning them into commodities and bringing them to the United States to work for free, which built the basis of this economy. It's built on genocide against the indigenous people. It's built on colonial wars and wars of occupation and exploitation around the world. This is the DNA of America. It's not broken. That's why the police actions in the African community are actions of a colonial state, no different than what the U.S. is doing in Afghanistan or what the illegitimate settler state of Israel is doing to the Palestinian people on their own stolen land. This is what we see inside this country. We have two Americas, and there is an oppressed community.
Bob Ayer is a well-informed, obviously, a guest that we have there.
Greetings and welcome back to Here to Help You. Yes, coming closer so everybody can see you. We want to go ahead and welcome to the show Miss Penny Hess, Yay. Chairwoman of the African People's Solidarity Committee. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thank you so much. We're honored to be on the show. Thank you very much.
We appreciate it so much. My first question is this. Let's talk about, I guess, your initial involvement with the organization. How did that come to be, right? And of course, like explain to us in regards to like what the early days would have been like for you.
Well, I first heard Chairman Omali Yeshitela speak in Louisville, Kentucky, which is near where I grew up, in 1976, in the summer of 1976. And I was just returning from living in France, actually in Europe. And of course, that was the period of time when Angola, the struggle in Angola and Mozambique and Cape Verde, and also that the people of Vietnam had just won the victory against the U.S. And as Chairman Omali Yeshitela says, that was a period when revolution was the main trend in the world. And I returned to the United States, and a friend of mine took me to see Chairman Omali Yeshitela in Louisville. And it was just brilliant. It made so much sense of the world because the chairman talked about how everything, that this entire system is built on the enslavement of African people, on the assault on Africa, on that Europe was poor, it was impoverished. White people were serfs, in feudalism, and had nothing. And how did Europe get to be so rich, so powerful? Because it left Europe and assaulted Africa as early as the 1400s and stole all the gold, and then all the human beings, turned African people into the first commodity of capitalism, to items for sale that made so much wealth, and then forced African people through violence into productivity of stolen labor. And just that stolen labor throughout the Caribbean, throughout Brazil and South America, and all throughout, and throughout the US, and the triangular trade, which just created an unprecedented amount of wealth that the world had never experienced before. And then this, along with the indigenous people, the theft of their land, and the theft of the land of Africa, and the theft of the resources of Africa, the gold, the diamonds, the coltan that we see today, and then the colonial domination of the majority of the people on the planet Earth. This is what created capitalism. This is what Chairman Omali Yeshitela says. And I mean, it's a parasitic system. And to me, it suddenly made the world make sense, because otherwise it's saying that, oh, white people are so brilliant. We invented capitalism. We have all this civilization and all of this stuff. No, everything we have is stolen. All the ideas, all this, the knowledge, everything is stolen from African people and everybody else on planet Earth. And that all white people sit on this pedestal of the oppression of African people. And, this makes sense to me. This is scientific. because it says that there was no benign genesis of capitalism, that it was born parasitic, it was born on violence. And the so-called founding fathers of the United States were owners of enslaved human beings.
Yes.
And George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, all of these people who we're supposed to uphold, but they were slave masters. George Washington owned 300 African people. And, I just feel that when we look at the world, not through the eyes of the colonizer, but through the eyes of the African working class and the oppressed and colonized people on the planet Earth, that's when we see the world as it really is. And it's not, and the white view is a fantasy. It's the world, the narrative of the conqueror, the narrative of the colonizer, the oppressor, and it's a fantasy. It's made up. And and I just think that this understanding of Chairman Omali Yeshitela was brilliant and is brilliant. And I don't know if you know, but he was just invited to speak at Oxford University in January, I believe it was, and he just won a debate on should Africa, quote unquote, have a closer union. He just killed it. He was amazing. He was electrifying. He had a standing ovation. There were about 300, mostly students, in the room, and other people, and they never heard anything like this. And it's just exciting and profound. And Chairman has fought his entire life for the liberation of Africa and African people in the face of a counterinsurgency, in the face of COINTELPRO, the assassinations of the leaders and the destruction of, not only, Malcolm X and Martin Luther King inside the borders of the United States, but Patrice Lumumba and Kwame Nkrumah, and Africans on the continent overturned, killed, assassinated, murdered, slaughtered. This is what the U.S. has done, because it knows that imperialism and capitalism sit on this pedestal of the of the lean and exploitation of Africa and African people. And I think that, this is the world where African people are free. This is the world in which human beings will be able to live without war, with justice and socialism, and every child being able to live, just look at the conditions of the world and look at Africa and how hundreds of millions of African people are living on, barely subsisting on $1 a day or less. And I was reading that, we were just on called All Diamonds Are Diamonds, where I found a statistic that said that in Africa, 170 million African children are forced to labor, enslaved basically in the diamond mines and in the other mineral mines of Africa. But African people, should be the richest, prosperous people on the planet, because Africa's resources are the most valuable, the most important resources in the world, and everybody is in there. As Chairman says, Africa is not poor. It is being looted every single day and has been for 600 years. So, when we look at all of the contradictions of the society that we live in, and as a white person, we have to come to terms with the fact that we participated in this violence. We lynched people, we carried out violence voluntarily as white people. We did this, and we have to say that, we have to admit that, we have to take responsibility for that. And we also have to say that we have 22 times the wealth of African people in this country. We have the ability to get social wealth and to get mortgages and pass down property from generation to generation, based on the fact that this country is built on the backs of African people, and African people are still impoverished and exploited today. And as we know, the police murders, the mass imprisonment, all the conditions that African people face, that there's two Americas, and that we have everything, every dream and aspiration comes at the expense of African people and oppressed people around the world. So, you know, everything we have is drenched in the blood of African people. And once we start to open our eyes to that, then we say, well, we owe reparations. And it's not a favor. It's not, you know, it's not charity. This is the stolen wealth of African people that we have in our hands. And it must be turned back over to the African Revolution. So Chairman Omali Yeshitela has fought for this, fought for the vision of Marcus Garvey, of Africa for Africans all around the world, those at home and those abroad, and has continued the legacy of the struggle that will be victorious of African people. It has built organization throughout Africa, throughout Europe, through the Caribbean. He has spoken and still speaks all around the world. And he created the African People Solidarity Committee to extend the African Revolution into the heart of the belly of the beast, into white society, so that we are there. APSC is a cadre organization of the party, and we are there to speak African nationalism, to win other white people to this, to tell the truth as it really is, you know, and to build a huge movement of white people for reparations to African people and for genuine solidarity for the right of African people to be free and liberated. And that's what we do. That is what we do. And we have been doing this. APSC was formed in 1976.
Okay.
And it's a thing. It really is an amazing thing. So, you know, it's very powerful. The African People's Socialist Party is the only organization like it, you know, any place in the world. It's incredible. And it's such an honor and so amazing to be under the party's leadership.
Okay, let's take a quick break. We have to,
Yeah.
because I still have questions for you. All you've done is stir up more questions inside me. So when we get back from the short break, we will have more with the great Penny Hess.
Welcome to Shadow Auto.
Just as Obama represents white power in blackface, the African People's Solidarity Committee represents black power in whiteface. It is the party's articulation of what the relationship between so-called white people and Africans is really about. It is the extension of the black revolution into the neighborhoods and homes of the oppressor nation population in the contest for black power and revolutionary transformation.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to Here to Help You. And we are here with the great Penny Hess. Thank you so much for joining us again. And you know what? I can actually hear you, so I can join into the conversation. Yay!
Oh, good.
So I have a couple questions, but I'm going to start with the one that I'm sure most people want to hear is, I guess the blatant question would be, why you? And I'm saying that only because a lot of people may say, what are you hearing from like members of your family, from people from the white people you go up to and speak about this? How do they react to you? And how do some black people take you when you come and you speak on this so strongly? How do they react to you? What type of reaction do you get usually?
Well, as far as first of all, I would say the white community, that of course this is a challenging in the white community, but I would make it clear that, you know, the African People's Solidarity Committee has a mass organization called the Uhuru Solidarity Movement and USM, and that we have Uhuru Solidarity Movement. We just had we're actually in the middle of an 11-city tour that we're on, and we have growing organization all over the U.S. We certainly want to build in Canada as well, by the way, and we are growing. We have a vibrant organization in Seattle, in Portland, and Oakland, and Philadelphia, Boston, New York City, Philadelphia. I said Philadelphia, St. Petersburg, St. Louis, Louisville, Kentucky. I mean, you know, we're growing, and I think that that's very, very important, because I think that, you know, white people are in a crisis because the system is in a crisis, because there is resistance of African and oppressed people all around the world, as Chairman O'Malley tells us. And I think that a lot of white people, you've probably seen there, you know, they want socialism now. And I think that a lot of people, white people, want to have and are searching for an honest and principled relationship to African people and oppressed people around the world. And a lot of white people are depressed now. The death rate is growing because white people in the United States are committing suicide, are addicted to opioid drugs and alcoholism. These things are just escalating the death rate for the first time in history of the white population. And I think that there is, you know, I think that, you know, a lot of young people in the white community have watched all of these police murders of African people, have watched, you know, it's so much more visible now on social media, etc., and can't escape it, and don't want to be part of this system, and want to rectify the relationship to African people, and are really attracted to the message of the African People's Socialist Party. And I think that also one thing that's really, really significant in terms of our relationship with the white community is that as the chairman has defined, and as the African People's Socialist Party defines, the conditions facing African people in the US and any place they are, as you had on that video, by the way, is not racism, just the ideas in white people's heads that you can never really fight, but it's colonialism, just like the people of Vietnam, or, you know, of Nicaragua or other Cuba, you know, they fought colonialism. They fought the state. They fought US imperialism in the form of a colonial power controlling their lives. And that's what defines this. And to me, I think that a lot of white people that we meet and embrace this are excited about that definition, because racism, like, well, I don't know if I can get over my racism. I mean, you know, I don't know what that means. But when the party says, no, the struggle is against colonialism, the struggle is to return the stolen resources and to stand in solidarity with the right of African people to be free and liberated and have self-determination and power over their lives, then that's like, yeah, that's clear. That is so clear. And, you know, we find that when white people come into this movement, they're really excited. And this whole question of reparations is not punitive for us. It's a kind of liberation for us, because it's not just money and turning money over alone, although that's really critical, because, you know, people have to live and create an economy in their own interest. But it's also a stand. It's a lifestyle. It's saying, I'm on this forward side of history. I break with my relationship to white power and to this colonial reality, and I stand with African people, which is, as the party is, in solidarity with all oppressed and colonized people. So we don't have, as the chairman says, we can break with and let go of our self-imposed isolation from everybody else, which is partly why we're, you know, drinking and whatever, you know, opioiding ourselves to death and committing suicide, why we're depressed and all, you know, is because we have self-imposed isolation from everybody else. And this way we join the world, and we have a role to play because we're in the belly of the beast. And it's very clear, it's very liberating, and you can see the way forward. And I think that's really critical. And as far as the question about the response from African people, well, you know, I would say, you know, that one of the things that the African People's Socialist Party has done so clearly is make the class distinction between the neo-colonial class that carries out, as the chairman said on that video, white power in blackface, versus the African working class, which is the majority of African people. And that, generally speaking, the response is good. You know, the response is good from when African people hear it, because we are saying the understandings of the African Revolution, you know. And anyway, I think that overall it's positive, and the party is building on so many fronts in Johannesburg, outside of Johannesburg, in Gauteng province, in Nairobi, Kenya, and, you know, other places in Cameroon and other places in Africa, and in London and in Paris. And Chairman has spoken in Toronto and in Canada. And the party is building. It's very exciting. The solidarity movement is building. It's a very dynamic and youthful movement. And, you know, just the response is great. And I would just say also that Chairman O'Malley used to tell us political theory called African internationalism is science. It's based on science. It's not based on emotionalism per se. You know, it's based on irrefutable historical fact. How did Europe get rich? It came out and assaulted Africa and looted it and kidnapped it, the human beings, and it stole all of North and South America and all the silver and the gold and everything from there. And it, you know, it plundered the Philippines and India and China and, you know, and all these places. That's how it got rich. It stole everything, thievery, you know, imposing, imperialism, rape, plunder. This is what, you know, we're told, oh, this is the greatest civilization on the planet Earth. No, this is the most foul civilization that's ever existed.
Right.
And
Agreed.
that, you know, it has to go. It has to go.
You got, I know you got one more.
We don't have time.
We don't
no.
have.
We have like
Oh,
one
I can't
more
even see the
segment.
time.
You go ahead.
We have time for a question, or
No,
this is
we
it?
have to go to the next segment.
By means, you know, Penny, we're gonna cut to another break here.
We'll be right back, guys. I'm here to help you.
We go back into the white community as, you know, inside the belly of the beast, to do the work, to win other white people just like you and me, to begin to separate ourselves from what this country and government and system, parasitic system, expects us to do, and to say we stand on the side of African people, we stand on the side of oppressed peoples around the world, and we recognize that that is the only thing that is going to get out of this crisis that we're in, because this system has to go.
Welcome back to Here to Help You, with the chairwoman of the African People's Solidarity Committee, Penny Hess. As I was saying, it was to someone over the break that the objectives are very clear cut, right? It's, of course, everybody who stands against one side of the line, right? Which, of course, in this case, the colonialists, right? And, of course, everybody else, right? Which drives home, for lack of a better word, a directive, right? And it's easier to swallow it in this case, right? Let's talk about the tour, because I know you briefly mentioned regarding the All Diamonds Are Blood Diamonds tour. Let's talk about in regards to like its inception, how that came about, in regards to like and how successful that's been so far.
Well, we just did the northeast leg of that, and we're getting ready to do our event here in St. Petersburg this week, and we'll be in Gainesville, and then we'll be in Seattle, Portland, and Oakland next week. So it's going really, really well. And it started, we've actually been having this slogan for a long time, going back to the period after the US-backed slaughter of people of Sierra Leone, and Liberia, when they had a horrible, very violent and brutal US war there in the 90s and early 2000s. And during that time, it was actually De Beers Diamonds, which is the biggest diamond conglomerate in the world, it's a cartel. And it's tied to British colonialism of Southern Africa, of Zimbabwe, what is now Zimbabwe and Azania, or South Africa. And during maybe around 2005, 2006, there was a movie called Blood Diamond with Leonardo DiCaprio and all this stuff. But the thing about it is that it was really the scam that De Beers Diamonds did, that said that when Africans got their own, some of them got control of the mines and would sell diamonds on the open market, whereas De Beers wanted to control the whole market. So De Beers called those diamonds blood diamonds. And, you know, so what we were saying is, well, wait a minute, do you know what and you know, the conditions that African people face under De Beers are blood diamonds, and all diamonds are blood diamonds until African people are free and liberated and own the resources.
Go ahead.
No. I know you have more. I had my one question. I just want to see how Penny did all of this. Like, I got my answer. She's fierce in her determination, so I'm good.
You sure?
Yes, you go ahead.
All right, cool. What's gonna take to have the tour do a leg here in Canada?
Oh wow, we would love that. I mean, we need somebody to sponsor it and put on the event and make it happen, and we can be in touch.
Okay.
Jesse Neville is the chair of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, and he, you know, people can be in touch. It would be great to be there. I was there, as I was telling Dave, many years ago, or several years ago. I guess it was maybe about 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah.
But it was, you know, I'm sure you all were just teenagers then or whatever.
Thank you for that. I was not a teenager.
But anyway, it was really great. It was a really good event when we were there, and I guess it was 2010, so it was really 9 years ago. But we would love to come back there again. Really, really like to be in Toronto. I think that would be very important. So, you know, if anybody is interested in building an event, we would love to come, because, you know, Canada's part of the same process as the U.S. basically, and it's a colonial place built on slavery, built on stolen land, and built on the land of the indigenous people.
Yep.
And you know, it's the same thing as far as I could see in every way.
You know what? We're definitely going to stay in touch, because maybe we can speak to a few people and see what's up. You know, we get you guys to come out here, you know, and because what I feel is this: it's one thing to go ahead and watch your speeches over YouTube, you know, and of course over Facebook and so on and so forth, right? But it's another effect if the people can go ahead and actually listen to it in person, right? And what Simone and I definitely feel is that what your organization definitely brings to the table, it's unheard of, right? And for this, it is a rare gem.
Yeah, the people I'm sure have lots of questions, would have tons of questions for you. Like, we don't even have enough time on this show to ask. We have honestly 3 pages of questions, Penny. We asked 3. Okay. So clearly, this conversation needs to continue, because we had no way of getting through all this. We had plans, but we were not prepared, because you have way too much to offer for a 30-minute conversation. But I do have one thing to ask before we finish the show. Some other challenges, maybe. What are some of the challenges you've faced with this movement, because you've been doing it so long? What are some of the, just in case someone was watching this was like, you know what, we want to get in contact with Penny, we want to start something like that here in Canada. I guess, what are the challenges, and what would you advise them wanting to start something like this over here?
Well, I mean, first of all, I just really want to appreciate what a tremendous job that you did on putting those videos together in such a beautiful way. It was so beautiful how this was done, and I really appreciate the discussion and the questions. And it's really an honor to reach as many people as we possibly can, to get out there. We do tabling. You know, we have, if somebody wants to join the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, we probably have organization, you know, where they are. We want to build it in Canada. We have a large infrastructure. The Solidarity organization, of course, it's under the leadership of the party, and raise up these questions and win their peer group, whether it's in the midst of the LGBTQIA movement, or middle-aged, or teachers, or students, or whatever they do. They just go out into the scene and start organizing, and they're just wonderful. And it's just, you know, you would know if a white person wants to start a branch or start getting involved, know that there are other white people all over the U.S. who have their back and who would come and be there. If you wanted to have an event, people could come up there, you know, whatever. We just really would struggle to make it happen. And we have many fronts of what we do. And our organization is very much, as we've said, involved in raising resources in St. Louis, which is incredible. And it's led by Deputy Chair Onizane Shatella, who's an amazing African woman who just, wow, I mean, she just makes everything happen in such a profound way. And the African People's Socialist Party has 50 economic institutions and projects and mass organizations, has so many fronts and different things that it does. So there's so many things that we support and we talk to white people about, but the Black Power Blueprint is one of the major ones. And that is where Deputy Chair went into St. Louis and started buying up, because St. Louis is like two towns in one. It's 50% African, 50% white, and it's almost like they call it the Delmar Divide, because Delmar Avenue divides the African community from the white. It's, you know, it's apartheid. And the conditions are totally, totally different, of course. And in the African community, there were a lot of abandoned houses and broken down houses, and Deputy Chair went in and she started buying up, because some of these were city properties that you could buy for, you know, very low price. And then we started a campaign, and they transformed a house that was almost falling down on West Florissant Avenue into a beautiful, beautiful state-of-the-art Uhuru house. Across the street, they demolished two buildings that were condemned and put a 50-foot flagpole with the red, black, and green 25-foot flag, and are building a community garden there, and One Africa, One Nation marketplace, and just so many other things that are going on there. This is a very, very dynamic movement, and there's so much, you know, that's happening, and it just mobilizes people. If people want to hear more about the Black Power Blueprint, they can go to blackpowerblueprint.org, and there's a lot of videos and pictures and all kinds of stuff of all the work that's been going on there for about the past year and a half or so. But in any case, there's a lot happening. So people can, you know, just as far as challenges, it's like the sky's the limit, because this is a period where, you know, the whole party is built, African People's Socialist Party is building all around the world. And we see the resistance, we see the incredible brilliance of the African working class, and then we see, you know, white people who really want to be part of this, because it's obviously the future. It's the future of this planet. This planet is not going to survive unless Africa is free. I mean, the system has destroyed the environment. It has destroyed the earth and the sea, and any system that would be built on massive genocide and kidnapping of the human beings, of course it would destroy the earth, you know, and we can't separate those things. That's part of what the system has done. So this is a great period. That's all I can say. This is a great movement. This is a great period.
Penny,
to be alive and
we are so thankful for you.
Yes, so
and
much.
I wish we had more time. But they only gave us the hour, so.
Well, I just thank you so much for having me on. You just did a great job. It was so exciting to talk to you. So
Thank you so much.
So Penny, we're going to be in touch, because I think we all have a lot of work to do.
Yes,
we
sure.
do. And we definitely want to see what kind of bridge we can connect between America and what you guys are doing there and what's happening here in Toronto, because there's work here being done. I think we're missing the solidarity factor a little bit. And I think there is a way to change that, but we have to kind of work through some of the resistance that is held by a lot of Africans here and their beliefs about having white people work alongside us. So I definitely think there's some work that we can do there. But for now, we have to say bye to everybody.
I know.
Too bad. But guys, definitely look for Penny Hess. You can find her. She's on Twitter at Penny Hess. She also has her books on Goodreads as well.
Yes.
You can find her on Facebook, also at Penny Hess. So definitely look her up. And if you guys, of course, comment, please, we want all comments. We don't care what they are. We want them. Put them on the YouTube page, probably the best place, because Penny herself can go on them. And if she needs to respond to you guys, she can. And of course, you guys, have a wonderful Tuesday evening. Like, comment, share this show out. Solidarity of people around the world has to happen. Anything else, Dave?
Uhuru.
Uhuru, yes. Anything else, sir?
All right. Unity through reparations.
Unity through reparations.
That's right.
Yes,
Have
absolutely.
a wonderful day, Penny. Thank you so much for coming. Our viewers, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We will see you guys all next week on Here to Help You. Have a wonderful week.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.